This is John Hauser from my world famous YouTube channel. I'm not really world famous. I go around calling myself a world famous intellectual, but that's just humor. I'm not really. I've been doing a series of videos on my experiences when I was in South Vietnam in 1971 to 1972. In one of my prior videos, I had shared that when I arrived in South Vietnam, I more or less had blank orders, which took me from Cam Ranh Bay to Phan Rang to eventually to Bien Hoa, and then into the 8th Special Operations Squadron. As it turns out, that most people that went into the 8th Special Operations Squadron had blank orders also. Now, I can't explain why this happened. I'm just telling you it happened. And I'm not trying to bring out any weird details. I'm just telling you what it was. So when I arrived at Bien Hoa, I arrived with two other gentlemen. One was an airman and one was a staff sergeant. And we all arrived at Bien Hoa without any idea of where we were going or what we were going to do. We were there just a very short time, and we were introduced to the flight chiefs there at the flight line at the 8th Special Operations Squadron. And we began working on A-37Bs. We were crew chiefs. But again, our orders did not specify where we were going, and we didn't know till we were actually in country. As it turns out, the 8th Special Operations Squadron for many years did not actually exist in history. If I can say this correctly, this was a unit that was unknown to people back in the States, other than the people who were associated with it. And I have here in my hands a book that I'm going to share with you. This book here is called Wing Shield, Wing Sword, A History of the United States Air Force by Bernard C. Nolte. He was a general in the Air Force. This is a book on the history of the United States Air Force. And in this book, he covers the war in Vietnam. Now, interestingly enough, in this book, he doesn't identify the 8th Special Operations Squadron, which was at Bien Hoa in 1971 to 1972, running bombing raids on the Viet Cong. Now, here's a picture right here. He shows a picture of an A-37, but it doesn't have in-flight refueling, and it doesn't have the capabilities of the planes that we flew. In addition to that, in the paragraphs below this book, this plane, this A-37, was flown only by South Vietnamese and the South Vietnamese Air Force. What I'm trying to say is there was no mention in this book at all of the 8th Special Operations Squadron. There's no mention of the 21 planes that were flown, and they were flown by American pilots. It's not mentioned. Now, the information about the 8th Special Operations Squadron really did not start to come out until into the late 90s, when the remains of Lieutenant Michael Blassie were taken out of the tomb of the unknown soldier. His last name is spelled B-L-A-S-S-I-E. He died in 1972, and his remains came out of the tomb of the unknown soldier in the late 1990s. At that time, information started to come out about the 8th Special Operations Squadron. I can't tell you why. I don't know why all those years it wasn't reported. I just don't know. I do know that there were some runs made into Cambodia that were unauthorized. And I simply know that the pilots told me that somebody had made decisions that they had to go into Cambodia and get the bad guys before the bad guys came over and tried to get us. And the story was that these bombing runs were unauthorized, but I can't prove that. I'm just telling you what I heard. But here's what I'm trying to say is this squadron of 21 jet fighters and the crew chiefs and the bombardiers and all the guys that were involved in the bomb crews, all of this went on, but none of it was reported to people back in the United States except when we had rocket attacks. And that these guys were heroes. These pilots were heroes And the crew chiefs and the people that manned these jets were heroes in 1972. And yet it was never reported and talked about to the American public. I'm surprised someone hadn't made a movie about this, because here you are, you're 21 years old or younger or a little older, you land at Benoit Air Base, and all of a sudden you're involved in the 8th Special Operations Squadron, the 8th SOS. You had never heard of them, or me. I never heard of them. And people back in the United States didn't know that they were there and that they were working and the work that they were doing. And even in the history books, as I had said earlier in one of my videos, I would show you that the history books do not represent what took place at Benoit in 1972. But now there are videos on YouTube that show the A-37Bs, and one of my videos I reference that. And I got lots of photographs that I'm sharing and testimonies. But you can go to YouTube and you can look up Lieutenant Michael Blasi, and you can find his story of how he crashed in 1972, how his remains were not recovered till 1975, and how he came out of the tomb of the unknown soldier in the late 1990s. Now, why do I say all this? To show you that this unit really was there, and this unit was Americans. And we were maintaining and flying these A-37Bs in South Vietnam, 1971 to 1972. They were not flown by the Vietnamese. They were flown by us. And that we were the guys going in, not me, I wasn't a pilot, but the pilots were going in, and they were doing the work of defending the troops and giving ground support. So there it is. There it is, that what I've been sharing with you is not in the history books. And only recently, in the last several years, has this information become available. So I was in Vietnam in 1972, which was 54 years ago. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If you have any comments or questions, put them in the comments thing. I always forget to say it in the other videos, but if you like this content, like and subscribe. I'm going to press on and make more videos, and eventually I'm going to give out some free advice. Stay tuned. Let me push the button here, see if it works this time. Oh, still ticking.